What's happening? Welcome to season 2 of Mad That. I'm Carl Riegler.
And I'm Harry Robinson. If you like what we do here, make sure to like, make sure to subscribe, comment, tell your nan.
Tell your nan's mates, tell your nan's mates. Tell the world that Mad That are trying to change the world.
Go to the retirement home and scream about Mad That.
Yeah, we need you to help us. We saw the love you gave us on series 1. Literally, it blew us away. The likes, the comments, the shares. People coming up and saying they love it. It means the world to us. So that's gone. Do you know what? We're going to make season 2 even better. So if we do that again, we'll make season 3 even better than that. And we'll keep growing until this podcast reaches the moon. Because we love making it so much. We just need to know that you love watching it. And we promise we'll make it bigger and better.
Yeah. So let us know who you want in the comments. You know, let us know like where you want us to take, what kind of topics you want us to cover.
Yeah.
Let's jump into the episode. We're going to start with the intro, which was filmed at the end of the episode. So you've got our raw kind of reaction. That's how we do it here.
Yeah.
And enjoy.
Let's go.
Reporting live from the front line. This is the Mad Dat.
I'm Joe Exotic, and welcome to the Mad Dat Podcast.
That was fun, wasn't it? Oh, we have got to do a little intro at the start. So, I mean, enough of you complain when we put season 1 out. There was like,
stop doing the thing at the start.
They do the intro at the start, but then they don't have anything at the end.
No, but this isn't the first episode.
Oh yeah, this is the first episode that we're recording. So this is today's guest is David Packouz.
Packouz.
Not Packouz.
And he said you remember it by remembering a pack of cows. Which works.
This was a lengthy record.
Yeah.
A fascinating one. There's a lot of complexities and there's a lot of stuff that we need to give maybe a bit of context to. So David is an ex-international arms dealer. His story was made famous by the book and then subsequent film War Dogs, where he's played by Miles Teller alongside Jonah Hill, who plays Efraim Diveroli, who is his business partner. And
who features throughout
and gets mentioned. They fraudulently repackaged Chinese ammo when they supplied the Bush administration with all of the ammunition for the Afghan War. And it was kind of downplayed a little bit in the interview. At one point, the war in Afghanistan was the biggest.
It was the biggest news story on the television.
Yeah.
In fact, if you type in biggest news stories of noughties, it will be in the top 3.
It might even be the number 1, do you know what I mean? And they were supplying all of the ammo from the one on the one side. They were
these two stoner guys
who were in their early 20s were the biggest small arms dealers in terms of small arms and like bullets and small guns, not like
towards
Jeremy
the
Beadle.
war on terror that you definitely know about.
Yeah. And then ended up getting in a little bit of trouble.
A little bit of trouble.
Really fascinating chat. And we do a little bit of a roundup at the end, which is why that's leading was a bit awkward.
Yeah, we do things different around here, but you know what? You love it because you love us and we love you. Keep watching. This is Mad That. Series 2 with David Packouz.
Little high five. Try to do no look. How are you, David?
Hi, David.
I'm
Hello.
doing all right. How are you?
I'm good, man. Often we start out with a question where obviously, I mean, we can kind of sum up your story as, you know, ex like international arms dealer and stuff like that. But to kind of contextualize yourself, who would you say is David Packouz or Packouz?
Packouz.
Packouz.
Yes, like a pack of cows.
Oh, nice.
It makes it easy to remember. Who am I? I'm a human being, a multifaceted human being. That is, I am a dad, not a husband anymore, ex-husband, son, brother, businessman, inventor, subject of a movie.
Yeah. Just to throw that in there. How does your biography of yourself compare to what the man on the street might say then?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the man on the street would probably mostly associate me with the film War Dogs. And I find that most people even though everyone knows that Hollywood is not particularly accurate when they make a movie version of a real story, everyone just assumes that it's accurate anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Even though they'll say, yeah, I know Hollywood makes stuff up, but like when it actually comes down to it, they actually do think that stuff really happens the way they see in the movies. Um, I will say that the movie is actually more accurate than most Hollywood films that are
Hmm.
based on a true story. So I'll give it that. If I had to put a number on it, it's probably about like 70% accurate.
Yeah. I mean, just to contextualize for people who might have clicked on this video who I guess don't know your story, and please butt in if I get anything I guess that you would disagree with. But obviously, you're an ex international arms dealer. At one point in your early mid-20s, you were possibly the biggest small arms dealer on the planet.
Yeah.
Around when you had a deal with the Bush administration for the Afghan War. I guess obviously that's an insane resume. How did you? I know the film kind of shows that you started out in being a masseur and massage school and stuff like that. How did you get into the line of work with arms dealing? How does someone even do that?
So it is true that I was a massage therapist before I became an arms dealer. So quite the career change. Um, I was also in school. I was studying chemistry. I had a few side businesses. I was importing bed sheets and towels from Pakistan, so that part's true too. Though the movie changed it so that they wanted a better like rags to riches arc, so they made it look like I was doing a lot worse than I actually was at that time. My linens and my bed sheets and towel business actually was semi-successful. It wasn't like huge, but like I was making money on it. So it wasn't, of course, they wanted to make it look like I'm desperate and,
Yeah.
so it's a better rags to riches story. But yeah, I mean, I got into it because I bumped into my friend Ephraim, who is played by Jonah Hill in the film. And I didn't bump into him at a funeral. That part is not true. But I bumped into him at a mutual friend's house. We both went over there because we both knew this guy. I mean, we had grown up together. We had known each other since we were like young teenagers. But he had gone off to LA when he got kicked out of high school for smoking weed. And he learned the business, the arms business and government contracting, how to sell to the government, bid on contracts and win from his uncle in LA when he was like 16. And when he was 18, he came back to Miami because he had a falling out with his uncle. And he started his own company, AEY Inc. And after about a year of working on his own, I bumped into him at a mutual friend's house. We both went over there to smoke weed, and he asked me what I was like doing these days. I told him about like my side businesses. I was importing SD cards from China, doing the bed sheet thing. And he's like, oh, that's very similar kind of skill set of what I'm doing with government contracting, looking for sources overseas and arranging shipping and licensing and import licenses and all that stuff, finance. But I bet I'm making way more money than you, so you should maybe come work with me. We can make a lot more money together. I need a guy I can trust, smart guy, like you. Been looking for a partner, and I was like, well, I think I'm doing pretty well. How much money are you making? And he's like, I'm gonna tell you, just to inspire you. I'm not showing off here, And he opens up his laptop and he says he shows me his bank account, and he had $1.8 million in cash sitting in his bank account. And he was 18 years old at the time. He was about to turn 19. I was like, holy shit. I mean, I was doing all right, but I wasn't a millionaire. So I was like, well, this guy knows something I don't, that's for sure. And I could learn something from him. So I said, okay, you convinced me, I'm in. And so we started working together. And at first I was going for mostly fuel contracts because the government buys everything. We weren't really set. He had a specialty in ammunition and weapons because he was a gun nut. That was just his thing. He loved guns. I was more at the time, I mean, I still am, I'm a musician. More of a hippie kind of character. Yeah, I'd never owned a gun in my life at that point. So it wasn't something I knew about. So we decided that I would go for something completely different to try to expand the business. And so I was bidding on fuel contracts, and my first contract that I won with the federal government For people who don't know, I'll give a little bit of background. The way
Yeah.
the government buys things is by law in the United States and most countries, but in the United States, they are required to post what they want to buy on their website. In the United States, it's sam.gov, like Uncle Sam. And then it's out for open bid. So that means that anyone who is registered with the government and is qualified to submit a bid can give the government their best price, and then the government looks at all the prices they receive and decides who's the best value, like the combination of price and delivery and reliability and all the factors that they take into account depending on the particular contract that this is for. So I bid on I think the first contract I actually won. It is kind of, the business is kind of like a casino. You can put a lot of work to find sources for this stuff. And one thing people always ask me, they're like, why doesn't the government just buy directly from the supplier? Why do they need a middleman, between you and them? And there's a few different reasons for that. First, one reason is that a lot of businesses just don't want to do business directly with the government because they're a pain in the ass to deal with. So in the United States, I think only 12% of US businesses are registered to do business with the government. So
Wow.
88% of businesses aren't even qualified because they didn't file the paperwork. And the reason for that varies, but some of them, they don't even know that selling to the government is a possibility, or they just don't want to deal with the hassle. The government also requires payment terms, so like they'll only pay you 30 days after you deliver. Some businesses don't like that. So there's a bunch of different reasons. And also the government sometimes puts out contracts that are for multiple items, not just for one thing. So it would be like 10 different things, and there isn't a single company that makes all those things. So they need a broker like us to go and find the suppliers for all those things and put it together in a package, arrange the shipping, give them one solid price for the entire thing that they need, and make all the arrangements for them. So that's why the government needs and uses brokers. So I submitted a whole bunch of bids, and the first one I won was for 50,000 gallons of propane. And I delivered that to an Air Force base in Wyoming. I think I made like $8,000 in profit. We were splitting it 50-50 at the time. So he made $8,000, I made $8,000. So that was like the first contract. That's like a starter contract. You can win up to $250,000 in contracts with the US federal government without any experience at all. So
It seems mental.
yeah, as a brand new company, you could win a $250,000 contract with the US government. And those are considered starter contracts. And and by the way, you don't need to be an American citizen either. I mean, you can be a UK citizen, and anyone around the world can register a local company and do business directly with the federal government. And
Can I ask? So you at this point you're quite young. You're late teens, early 20s.
Yes. At this time, I was 23 when I first started.
I mean, that's insane because I mean, I'm recently 25.
Harry bought a house today,
and I don't know how to iron.
Yeah,
so I definitely wouldn't have been able to be running, like arms dealing and.
As you say, previous to that, you were, you still had lots of businesses and a lot of irons. Where did you get your entrepreneurial skills from? I mean, obviously from leaving school to that, where did you get all these skills? Because that's difficult for the most ardent professional to do, let alone a young person.
Well, I mean, I've always been entrepreneurial. I mean, my first business I started when I was 6 years old.
Wow.
I was 6 years old. I was living in Israel at the time, and my parents are American, but we're Jewish, so they had moved. We had moved to Israel when I was a kid for my dad's work. I moved to Miami when I was 8 years old. When I was about 6, I was living in this apartment building in Israel, and the apartment building didn't have like a garbage chute. And so or an elevator, so you'd have to like take your garbage down the stairs to the dumpster on the corner, and it was a big pain in the butt. And so my mother asked me and my older sister's like a year and a half older than me, so she asked us to take out the garbage, and we were like, oh, we don't want to do this, it's annoying, we want to play with our Legos. And my dad comes to us and he's like, oh, you guys are looking at this all wrong. This is a big opportunity, not a hassle. You can start, nobody wants to take out their garbage, so you can start a service to take out people's garbage and they'll pay you. And we're like, oh, we can make money. And so we offered our service, taking out the trash like every other day for a quarter a week. That was what we charged people.
Wow.
Yeah. And
Good rates.
That's pretty cheap.
good rate. Yeah. Didn't really know what to charge. So we did it for a quarter a week. We signed up like 8 neighbors to our service. And then after about a week, we told our dad, this is way too much work. It's not worth the money. And he's like, well, what if you make double the money? Is it worth the money then? And we're like, well, I mean, for double the money, it's worth it. And he's like, well, then just raise your prices to 50 cents a week. And he says, well, I mean, we said, well, I mean, we just said it was a quarter a week last week. How are we going to raise it to 50 cents? He's like, well, if you don't raise it, you're going to quit anyway. So you might as well give them the chance to pay something you're willing to do it for. And so we went to all the neighbors and told them, hey, the price is now 50 cents. And all of them except one just paid they were like, yeah, fine, 50 cents a week is fine. One neighbor quit, and from then on we saw their kid taking out the trash, which we'd never
Would you say that you've all, and I'm asking this question because obviously Efraim, who is Efraim Diveroli, for people who don't know, to give context, I mean, he is portrayed in the film, but is also, from my understanding, the same in real life, very money hungry, a workaholic, a bit off the rails. Like, as much as you kind of described kind of yours and his business savvy, he was doing a lot of coke and he was staying up and dealing a lot of arms. Would you say that you were always money hungry? I guess growing
money
up, would you?
hungry. I wouldn't put it in that way.
Yeah, of course.
Doesn't sound great, especially since I just mentioned that I'm Jewish. I could.
Oh no, I didn't mean. Honestly, I didn't mean
No,
that.
it's all good. I get a lot of these comments on the internet. It's fine. I'm used to it. I actually don't.
Okay, I'll square it. I think going back to that entrepreneurship, was that always important to want to be successful in that role?
That's a better term to use than money
Yeah,
hungry.
thank you.
It's all in the words you use, right? Yeah, I'm not insulted. Don't worry about it. So yeah, I've always been ambitious. I remember, like, since I was a kid, as a 6-year-old, and I was making money from my garbage business, and I realized I could use, because my parents refused to buy me like ice cream or anything like that, but like there would always be this ice cream truck that would come around every day, and I would like want that ice cream so bad, but my parents would not get it for me. And so when I started making money from like the garbage business, I was like, wow, I could buy my own ice cream. And it was like a huge thing for a 6-year-old to be able to buy your own ice cream whenever you want. Made me a little fat at a certain point, but it's the downside of success. So yeah, I think that was definitely a formative experience for me, and always made me see the value in entrepreneurship and in making your own money and in success. And so, yeah, I've always been very, very entrepreneurial, as I got older. And when we moved to Miami, I started selling mangoes on the side of the street. As I got into my late teenage years, started selling weed, the standard thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, they've quickly ramped up from garbage to mangoes to weed to guns. I think that's quickly.
I think mangoes and weed are quite close to each other.
Yeah, these days I'm a little bit less controversial. I sell devices that floss your teeth, InstaFloss. Check it out.
If we could just loop back round to I guess when you're starting your kind of arms dealing alongside Efraim, in relation to money, obviously you're making way more money a lot quicker. You're seeing how much money Ephraim's kind of making. What does that do to someone in their early 20s when you're kind of living this rock and roll, all guns blazing, very pun intended lifestyle?
Well, for me, it was like, at least at that time, I actually wasn't pulling in a lot of money myself, because even though we were making money together, and this was my big mistake, his whole thing was like, he kept on saying every time I'd win a contract and we get paid, because we were always working on multiple contracts, right? There was never, because you don't know what you're going to win. So you're always like, every week we'd submit like 3, 4, even like 5 contracts sometimes. And if you're lucky, you win one of them at most. it's very common to like lose 9 and win 1, but all you need is 1 with when it comes to these kind of contracts, and it makes all the ones you lost worth it. So we're always working on new contracts and always in various stages of either winning a contract or delivering on a contract. And because, as I mentioned before, the government only pays you 30 days later, we needed to finance those contracts. So he had, as I said, $1.8 million in the bank, and he was doing the financing, and that was part of our deal. We were using his company structure and his experience in dealing with the government, and he would make sure that all the bids were filled out correctly and all that. But and he was also very good at negotiating. That was also his strength. Eventually negotiated me out of everything. But and so like every time like I'd win a contract, and like the fuel contract, I had $8,000 coming to me. He's like, oh, we're about to win this other contract and we're going to need money to finance it. I'm financing it with my money. It's only fair that now you made some money, you use your money to finance it. Why should I take all the risk? You should finance it to the best of your ability. And I was like, okay, I mean, that makes sense, right? It's only fair. And so we kept on rolling my money from one contract to the next, to the next, to the next, until finally we won the Afghan deal, which was like a $300 million contract, and that needed all the money we had plus more that we had to get from investors in order to finance it. And so all my money got sunk into that contract. So I never actually pulled any money out of the business, and then eventually he fucked me out of everything. So I thought I was going to be rich at the time. Like in my mind, I was living off my savings that I'd made from my previous businesses, from the bed sheets and, massage therapy and SD cards. But I never actually was pulling money out. On paper, I was rich, but I wasn't pulling money out of the business. And eventually he just fucked me out of everything. So it wasn't like at that time I was rolling in dough and, throwing money around and buying Coke. He had a lot of money in the bank. And the funny thing about him, at least at that time, he was super, super cheap. Like it hurt him to like spend money, like and of course it goes into all the stereotypes, of course, as I'm sure we'll see in the YouTube comments. But it was completely true. I mean, like this guy, like it was a really funny story. I once saw him argue on the phone with, I think it was AT&T, like a customer service rep with AT&T, which is like the phone company here in the US. And he was like yelling and screaming that his bill was overcharged by about like $5. Like he did not approve that charge. I want to speak to your man. Like 45 minutes of like, insisting on speaking to the manager and, arguing. And I'm like, dude, you spent 45 minutes. You're arguing over $5. What's like, I would pay $5 not to have to do that. Like, what are you doing? You can spend your time doing other stuff. And he's like, it's the principle of the matter. Nobody fucks me.
Well, he was prevalent, and obviously you've mentioned quite a few times, and we'll get to about kind of him screwing you over, and he was prevalent in kind of screwing people over. Could you kind of give us examples of how Efraim would? I know there's instances where he would call up like competing bidders and pretend to be like the contract officer and stuff like that.
I saw him do that. That's in the movie. They put that in the movie, and that part is actually true. I saw him do this. He had a whole bunch of little tricks that he would use to win contracts, and one of the less legal ones is he would call up a competitor who he knew was bidding on the contract. And he would call him up and pretend to be the contracting officer. That's the government official who is managing the bidding process, the person who you submit your bids to and decides who wins, right? So he calls that up the company that's competing against him. And he pretends to be the contracting officer. And he's like, hey, our computer system went down. He calls him like right at the deadline. It's like deadline's in an hour. The computer system is down. I want to make sure that you guys are in consideration for this bid. So we weren't able to submit your bid because of this glitch, but if you just give me your numbers right now, I'll submit it in by hand for you, because I know you guys are serious, and I want you to have a chance to win this thing. So just let me know what your bid is, and I'll put it in to make sure you're in the running. And these people, shockingly, I mean, I've only seen him do it a few times, and I'm sure he's done it when I wasn't there, so I don't know his, the percentage of success, but I've seen it work multiple times where they just tell him what they bid over the phone, and then he could just go in and underbid them. It was amazing. And the thing that really amazed me is that he never would cover his tracks. Like, he would call them from his cell phone without blocking his number, like as if like they can't just use a caller ID and see who just called them. Like, it was bizarre. But he was completely careless. He did it, and as far as I know, he never got any real repercussions for doing stuff.
Do you think that was laziness, or do you think that was like sheer ego and confidence?
Maybe both. I have no idea. Yeah. I also, like, he wasn't particularly technically savvy. Like, he was very savvy when it came to manipulating people, but like when it came to technology, he wasn't like super, like I'm much more of like a tech nerd, like these days I've developed like, tech products and stuff like that. But even back then I was very into science, as I was studying chemistry, and I was telling it, but I would tell him, I'm like, dude, what are you doing? You're not even blocking your number. And he's like, whatever, they're not gonna, blah, 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 and so like, he just didn't care. Like I would tell him, like, I'd see him do it, and then I'd tell him, and then like, I don't know if it was his ego defending himself, or he, like, I don't think he actually knew that was a problem until I told him, but maybe it was his ego that he was like, I don't give a shit, and to his credit, so to speak, he never got caught, like he never got in trouble for it. So I guess he was right as far as his instincts on the matter.
Were you aware how, I guess, I'm not sure if it's illegal or legally dubious, but were you aware how much trouble you could have got in, I guess, if that was found, or AEY as a company?
Right. I don't know the exact legalities of that. I can't imagine that it's definitely not ethical, that's for sure. But
I think it's more that I think that's on them.
You think?
Yeah, that's on them. If you're loose enough to just give the knowledge away, I think that's kind of.
But it's fraud though as well. It is impersonating.
Yeah.
It's literally tricking them.
Yeah, I suppose.
Them with lies. But yeah, he never did get in trouble for it, but which always surprised me. But there were things that he did that were way worse than that I thought could have gotten him in much more trouble. Like, for example, like maybe like 2-3 months in after starting to work with him, he got a call from one of his connections that like the king of Nepal was like trying to suppress a pro-democracy movement, and the king of Nepal wanted to buy like attack helicopters and riot gear and heavy machine guns and like tear gas and like pretty much a suppress your people kind of a bunch of equipment. And he got really excited. He's like, I'm going to put together a Save the King package, and started working and sourcing all these things. And I told him, I'm like, dude, I highly doubt that's legal, because the United States does not look kindly on monarchs that are suppressing pro-democracy movements violently. And they definitely won't like it that you're supplying that guy, in order to do that. So that's definitely not legal. So you should maybe not do that. And he's like, oh yeah, you don't worry about it. I got this. You stick to your fuel. Okay. You just leave this stuff to me. I was like, okay, well, but like, I knew that like, if he had gotten caught for that, he could definitely get in trouble. I was nervous I was going to get in trouble just by knowing about it. So, and not, reporting him, so to speak, which I didn't do, but, so yeah, that definitely made me very nervous.
Nepal has just had a revolution. They've just burnt down the parliamentary building. So maybe if Efraim had got involved, the history might have looked a bit different.
So were you really like stringent on the rules? Like where you say Efraim was very happy to break the rules and like bend the rules to progress. But were you trying to bring him back down? Were you the guy who was like, no, let's do this legit?
I did my best, but Efraim wouldn't listen to anyone. He's not the kind of person to listen to reason, or to tell someone, or to anyone who's telling him to be more cautious. He has a very, very high tolerance for risk, and that's one of his strengths and one of his weaknesses as well. As we've seen. Obviously,
you were friends back then. And I know he screwed you over, but the way you talk about him interests me a little bit, because as someone he's fucked you over so bad, you still bring up his like I guess, beneficial character elements, I guess, a little bit.
Sure.
What are your opinions on him? Do you hate his guts? Because I would. Like, I wouldn't blame you.
I do hate his guts. Absolutely. I hate his guts.
Yeah.
The guy owes me like $5 million and I highly doubt he's ever going to pay me. If he does pay me, we'll be friends again. I can forgive him if he pays me the $5 million plus interest that he owes me.
Yeah.
But I'm not that hung up on it. I don't think about him like all day. It's not like I'm
Yeah, of
fuming
course.
and like keeping me awake at night and planning, plotting against him. Like it's water under, it's been almost 20 years, it's a long, long time. I've got my life has moved on well beyond him, thankfully. The only time I ever think about him is when I do these kind of interviews and people ask me about him, which, look, it's been so long. The emotional aspect of it is way, way reduced. I don't emotionally seethe and hate him. I don't like him. I think he's a piece of shit. I think he's still a piece of shit. From what I know, he's still fucking people over. Every once in a while, people call me up and they're like, "Oh, I made the big mistake of going into business with him, and now I have to sue him for all the ways he fucked me over." And I'm like, "Okay." And then they ask me advice about how to deal with him, and so that this has happened multiple times over the years. So yeah, so I have little doubt that he's still doing his same shenanigans and still behaving in a similar way. I imagine, at least he hasn't gone back to prison yet. I imagine he's at least learned to skirt the law a little bit better these days. So, but it wouldn't surprise me if he ends up back in prison. That wouldn't surprise me at all, because it's just his personality. He likes to always push the limit and see where the line is. And the only way you find out where the line is by going a little over the line. And then you can kind of dial it back a little. But sometimes if you go over the line, you went over the line, it's too late. And so it wouldn't surprise me at all if he ends up back in prison, or even if like someone he fucks over, decides to do something about that.
Yeah.
It wouldn't surprise me at all, because the people he fucks over, he really shouldn't be fucking over. I hope I'm wrong, and I hope that one day he realizes that he was a piece of shit and he pays me the $5 million plus interest that he owes me.
I hope that too.
Well, I mean, let's loop back around, because obviously there'll be people who obviously know that he's fucked you over from this conversation, but not know, I guess, why in the story. So obviously it's a very complex story, so you might have to concise it a little bit. But let's talk about the $300 million contract for the Afghan War with the Bush administration and the Pentagon and stuff like that. And and leading up to, I guess, how you came into contact with Henry Tomei, who is a famous arms dealer.
Efraim, so I was working on a whole bunch of different things, like on the fuel thing. I worked on some contracts for food and for trucks and clothing and a bunch of random stuff. I mean, the government buys literally everything, and they spend hundreds of billions of dollars every year. I think $1 trillion is the defense budget alone. So the federal government in total is about like 7 trillion, which it's like many times more than the GDP of most countries they are spending every year. So the federal government is the biggest customer by far on the planet. And so they literally buy everything. They have bases all over the world. They have to support those places. They have all sorts of programs. So I was bidding on all sorts of contracts. And then in the summer of 2006, Efraim asked me, he's like, "Hey, I just saw this contract, this solicitation, where they ask for bids. And it's one of the biggest things I've ever seen. And this is just the kind of ammo that we have experience in delivering. It's a Warsaw Pact ammo." So the Afghans, the United States had invaded Afghanistan in 2001, I think, after September 11th. And they were, pretty much beat back the Taliban. They were trying to build up a self-sustaining democracy there. Obviously, they failed, but took them 20 years to fail, right?
Yeah.
So at the time, they were trying to build up the local Afghan government, and part of that was supplying them with weapons and ammunition so they could police themselves and fight the Taliban on their own, etc. And the Afghans were used to using Soviet ammunition and weapon systems, Warsaw Pact systems. And it also happened to be that those systems tended to be way, way cheaper than the NATO systems. So the United States decided to supply our new Afghan allies with Warsaw Pact weapon systems and munitions to save money and also to make the training easier. The United States does not produce this stuff in any quantity within the US or within our allies. So they had to put it out for open bid. And the only place you can get all this stuff is from like the former Warsaw Pact, from the former Soviet Union. So we had already, and the same situation in Iraq as well. The Iraqis are also used to Soviet weapon systems. So Efraim had already delivered much, much smaller quantities of this Warsaw Pact style munitions to Iraq on behalf of the US government. So we already had what they call past performance for the company, right? That's proof that we had done this kind of business in the past. And you need that in order to win the multi-million-dollar contract. So as I said before, you could win a $250,000 contract without any past performance, without any experience. And once you win a few of those, then you qualify to bid on contracts that are bigger. And so we had already delivered quite a few as a company. We had already delivered quite a few contracts to Iraq for these types of munitions. So we already had all the past performance in order to qualify to bid on this huge contract for Afghanistan. So Efraim told me, he's like, look, we qualified a bid on this, so we have to bid on this. We're probably not going to win it because it's just enormous. They're probably going to give it to one of the multi-billion-dollar, defense contractors like, General Dynamics or ATK Systems or whoever. But we do qualify to bid on it, so we'd be stupid not to at least try. He's like, this is an enormous, enormous contract. I have, these 5 companies that I've been dealing with. But in order for us to be competitive, you have to go and find every single company in the world who potentially has a source of supplies for this stuff so that we could fill in all the gaps and be most competitive, right? If we just deal with my people, we're not going to win this contract. So he's like, and that's going to take a lot of work, and I'm doing all this work on these other contracts, so I want you to work on this. So I'm like, okay, fine. It's an enormous opportunity. The chances are low, but the reward is high. So I figured I might as well give it a shot. So I worked, a few months really hard to pretty much track down every company and source for these types of munitions in the world. It was a very grueling task because a lot of these companies, they're like former like Soviet like state-owned firm that were turned private. Their sense of customer service is non-existent, right? They're like, when you call them up and they act like you're bothering them, like it's not, there's no such idea of like customer service. In the Soviet Union, you just did the minimum, and because that's all you had to do, right? There was no, it was not capitalism, right? So it's a very different mindset. And a lot of them only had faxes. They didn't even have like emails. It was a huge pain in the butt to deal with these companies. Anyway, tracked them all down, sent them all the faxes, made all the phone calls, spent a lot of sleepless nights, got an enormous spreadsheet of all the sources of supplies. And we finally bid on that contract. It took a few months of work, but and then we didn't hear from them for a few months, I guess, as they were like processing all the submissions, and we thought, okay, we probably lost, so we kind of moved on to start working on other stuff. And then towards the end of 2007, they were like, okay, you guys, we're considering giving you this contract. We have to do a whole bunch of audits on your company to look at your systems, how much money you have, what your accounting system is. They actually sent a team of contracting officers to our office. They said they were going to send them. We didn't even have an office at the time. And so we were like, oh, we got to get an office so we look legit. And so we rented an office. We filled it with IKEA furniture. We hired some like girls off Craigslist to, be our secretaries and that person.
That's good.
So we would look legitimate. And they sent like, I think it was like 4 or 5, like they were all like middle-aged ladies, like older ladies, all ladies for some reason, to our office to do an inspection. And Efraim's really good at like charming. He's he's got that sociopathic skill of being able to manipulate people into like liking him before he stabs them in the back, of course. So like he like I remember like they come in to our office and he's like, ladies, I couldn't tell over the phone how beautiful you are. Like if it wasn't completely illegal, I'd be buying you all diamonds right now. And so they all laugh. Oh, you're so charming. And so they, he charged them. They loved him. They gave him great marks. And we ended up winning the contract, and we won. And our contract, we were by far the lowest bid, and that's why they gave it to us. They told us later, which illegally they weren't allowed to tell us, that we won we beat the next person by $52 million. We were lower than $52 million. And our contract was, I think it was $298 million was the value of what we bid it at. So it was almost $300 million. And it was just like us two working in this, we beat General Dynamics was bidding on this contract, and they had a team of like 100 people working on. They told us, because we had met the boss of their brokering division. It's a small aspect of General Dynamics. They're mostly making armored vehicles and whatever, but they do have a brokering division. They have like 150 people working in that division. And we met the leader of their division at one of the trade shows, and he was like, "Oh, you guys are working on that kind. Don't worry about that. We got this. You shouldn't waste your time on that." So we knew that they were very confident they were going to win the contract. They were very furious when we won it, and they even submitted I think it was a protest to the Army, trying to get, saying that I don't even know the reasoning. I didn't see the documents of what they submitted, but I know they submitted a protest that saying that we shouldn't have won the contract and that they should do a review, but the Army rejected it and let us keep the contract. So that's how we ended up winning.
How much were you set to make personally from that one contract?
So we were averaging, when all was said and done, about a 20% profit margin on that. And so we were going to pull, between the two of us, we were going to pull $60 million in profit.
Unreal.
For this the other contracts, we had a 50-50 agreement, because I was doing all the work, and he would come in at the last second and do some negotiations, supply the financing and the corporate structure and stuff. So we were splitting a 50-50. For this one, he was like, "Hey, listen, this is my bread and butter. I've already got a lot of this stuff sourced from my 5 sources that he was using. I just need you to fill in the gaps. It doesn't make sense. We're doing the 50-50. So he's like, "For this one, we'll do 75-25. And I was like, "Fine, I'm 25% is more than fine for me. I'll still $15 million. I'll be set." So
how does that feel at the age of, so you're 24 at this point? You're set to make potentially $24 million or whatever it was. 15 million dollars.
Still a lot of money.
Yeah, still an insane amount of money. You're two,
and this is back in 2007. So in today's,
so it's even more money. Yeah.
$25 million in today's.
And so you're both dead young. You're both stoners out of Miami Beach. There's 2 of you, or however many you had in the company, and you're going up against these huge companies. What's the adrenaline like when you find out you win a contract like that to supply arms for the Pentagon?
Yeah, we couldn't believe it, to be honest.
How do you celebrate? What did you do? What was surely you celebrated big?
Yeah. So I'll always remember it, of course. I was at home, and Efraim calls me up, and he's like, "David, I've got good news and I've got bad news." And I'm like, "What's the bad news?" And he's like, "Our first task order is only $600K. And I'm like, "We won the contract?" And he's like, "Fuck yeah, motherfucker, get dressed. I'm coming to pick you up. We're going to celebrate." And so we went off to I think it was an Italian restaurant. He loved doing coke. He would always pressure me to do cocaine with him. And he had this little plastic bullet that was filled with cocaine. And so we're in the restaurant, and he has one of those fancy cloth napkins, and he's pretending to blow his nose, and he's snorting cocaine at the table. He's ordering more champagne. And then he slides the thing under the napkin, and he's like, today you're doing that, motherfucker. You take a fucking hit. He loved doing the pressure. I'm like, fine. We just won a $300 million contract. Fine, I'll do some cocaine. I wasn't a fan. I'm still not a fan. I'm like,
yeah. If I thought I was set to make $15 million, I think my decisions would also sway.
Yeah, and he only drinks pina colada. So take us, maybe jump us forward a little bit so we can fit this in. So you have to then make the ammunition and obviously get the broker the deal and that kind of stuff. and it ends up being decided that you're going to get the ammunition from Albania. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe talk us through how you get to that, and then what went wrong, I guess.
We had on the contract, it was about, I think about 30 different types of munitions, right? It wasn't just one type. It was everything from like pistol ammo to assault rifle ammo to tank ammo to mortars to like anti-aircraft rockets. It was all munitions, not the weapon systems themselves. But it was the entire spectrum of munitions that the army was going to need for all their weapon systems. All like, and the idea was that this was the Bush administration was worried that Bush was super unpopular at this time, so they were worried that the next president was going to be a Democrat, which they were right. Obama won. But they thought that because it was going to be a Democrat, they were going to pull out of Afghanistan immediately and leave the Afghans hanging, which they were wrong. It took until Biden to completely pull out of Afghanistan. Because they thought that, they decided to supply the Afghans with enough munitions to last like the next 30 years, right? That was the idea, to hold them over unfriendly administrations in the United States. So that's why there was such a massive quantity of stuff, and why there was the entire range. So there isn't one place that can make all these types of munitions, well, except for Russia. But Russia was on the blacklist at the time. They were actually originally going to buy directly from Russia, the U.S. Army, because Russia could supply everything. But before they could make the deal, Russia decided to supply Iran with some nuclear technology, and they landed themselves on the blacklist. So then it was illegal for the U.S. Army to buy it directly from Russia, and that's why they had to put it out for open bid, and that's how we won the contract. And the Russians were pissed. I mean, they were expecting to win this contract, and that's why later on in our contract they tried to interfere with our deliveries, and that's a whole other story.
Yeah, didn't you have beef with Putin at one point? Didn't Putin confiscate as an aside, sorry, but I've read this story and it
is a
baffles
crazy
me.
story.
So did a plane get stopped in Kyrgyzstan, was it?
Yeah, Kyrgyzstan.
So what happened there?
Okay, so there's two different stories here. The Kyrgyzstani plane, I don't think had that much to do with Putin, but there was the Turk. I could tell you both stories, but so with Kyrgyzstan, that happened later, after we were already delivering on a regular basis into Afghanistan, and then we had an aircraft, a 747 cargo jet, which was carrying about 100 to 110 tons of munitions, and it was landing in Kyrgyzstan. The U.S. Air Force has an air base in Kyrgyzstan that they were renting from the Kyrgyzstani government. I think they were paying something like $30 million a year for this rent for this air base, and they were using it as a staging point to get into Afghanistan, as a refueling point. So our aircraft lands in Kyrgyzstan to refuel, and the Kyrgyzstani government tells us that we don't have the proper paperwork, so they're not going to let our plane leave. And we're like, what the hell? We do have the proper paperwork. I mean, the airline wouldn't have taken off from Albania in the first place if they, didn't have the paperwork for every step of the way, because they're risking their aircraft, right? That's a $100 million plane. So, so we knew we had the proper paperwork, and the Kyrgyzstani government is like, no, you don't have the proper paperwork, and so we're not letting you leave. And every day that your plane is on the tarmac, we're gonna fine you $300,000 a day. And we're like, whoa, 300,000, what the fuck is going on here? We're getting, strong-armed. And so I call up the defense attaché in Kyrgyzstan. So the United States has embassies in most countries around the world, and every embassy has the embassy is part of the State Department, right? They're part of the State Department, which is more of a is not a military branch of the government, right? But the Pentagon has a military officer in every embassy called the defense attaché, and they're like the go-between between the United States military and the United States State Department, right? So I call up the defense attaché in the State Department in Kyrgyzstan, and I say, hey, look, we have a contract with the U.S. Army. we have all the paperwork. I don't know why they're saying we don't have the paperwork. What's going on? Can you help us out here? And he's like, yeah, let me call up my contacts. And so he calls up his counterparts within that country. And a day or two later, he calls me back and he's like, yeah, something really weird's going on. These guys aren't returning my phone calls. They're usually very responsive and very friendly, but they're kind of giving me the cold shoulder. Let me do some more investigation. Another week goes by and the plane is still on the tarmac. They're not letting it go. Eventually, I think it took them like 2 to 3 weeks of like just holding the plane. Robert Gates, who was the Secretary of Defense, the leader of the Pentagon, had to fly to Kyrgyzstan to negotiate with the Kyrgyzstani government to see what the fuck was going on. And it turned out that they were using our plane as leverage to strong arm the US Air Force into raising the rent on their airbase. So they wanted to go from 30 million a year to 60 million. They wanted to double the rent, and they were refusing to let our plane go to have some extra leverage in those negotiations. Now, the United States is the richest country in the history of the world. An extra 30 million is like fucking pocket change to the United States government. So they're like, yeah, sure, we'll give you 60 million. And then they let our plane go. So we were kind of like pawns in this kind of like internet.
Yeah, you're like a geopolitical hostage.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. Our plane was a hostage. Luckily, we weren't there ourselves, but our plane was being held as hostage in order for the Kyrgyz to squeeze extra money out of the U.S. government. So that's what that happened there. The story that you're referring to with Putin happened a little bit earlier. Excuse me, happened a little bit earlier on, where before we had made any deliveries to this is in early, probably around April 2007. So we won the contract in January, and then it takes like a few months to get all the licenses in order to do this, because the licenses you need to move military goods internationally, you need an end user certificate, which is an EUC, they call it, which is a document from the person, from the government that is going to be receiving the stuff. And then you need an export license from the government that is sending the stuff. And then you need, if you're flying by air, you need what they call an overflight permit from every country that your plane is going to pass over with these military goods. So in order for our plane to go, and we couldn't deliver by ship because Afghanistan is landlocked and surrounded by unstable countries like Pakistan, which are large parts are controlled by warlords who would love nothing more than having a whole bunch of ammunition going through their territory that they could grab. So we decided it was too risky to do it by land and by ocean and land. And the only other option was using Russia's railroad, and that wasn't an option because they hated us. So they weren't like approving anything. So what we decided to do is we decided to fly it in, which is by far the most expensive option, but was really our only option. But that meant we needed overflight permits, and we got it took us like a good 2 months to get the overflight permits. A lot of these countries work really slow, but there was one country that we needed that was holding out. Turkmenistan was holding out, was not giving us a overflight permit. And at first they said yes, but then Putin had a state visit to Turkmenistan, and then as soon as after that state visit, they changed it to no. So we don't know that Putin had anything specifically to do, but it was very coincidental that they changed their mind right after the official state visit to Turkmenistan by Putin. So maybe it is, maybe it isn't. Obviously, we'll never know, but it is suspicious.
It's cool. It's cool to think that it is.
Yeah, it is. It's cool to have an enemy in Vladimir Putin personally. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it is. It is. But I'll tell you, the way we got around it was after they said no, I realized, I'm like, wait a second, Turkmenistan has a national airline. So I asked them for a shipping quote. And so we decided to go with them. And as soon as we signed the contract with them, they got the overflight permit issued like that.
So just to loop back, I mean, both unreal stories, by the way. Just to loop back, because I'm conscious that we're low on time. When with the ammo, with the Afghan War, did you go to Tirana and Albania to sort that out?
So I didn't personally. So that's another way the movie differs from real life. The movie combines my character and someone else. So at the time when we decided to send someone to Albania, so I'll back up a little. we sourced the best price for the AK-47 ammo, 7.62 by 39, was coming from Albania.
Yeah.
And it was significantly cheaper than anywhere else in Europe. And the reason for that was Albania was trying to join NATO at the time, and one of NATO's requirements was that they destroy all their old Soviet era munitions. So they would have to pay to destroy this ammunition. So they were thrilled to sell it for pretty much any price someone was willing to pay. And so we got an incredibly low price. And but we realized at the time, so we bid, and that was like one of the reasons we want, not the only reason. We also got a really good price on the grenades, but in a normal company like General Dynamics would know that when you are deciding to do things like air shipping a large quantity of goods, air shipping prices are very heavily dependent on fuel prices, right? That's 80% of the cost is fuel. So if the price of oil fluctuates, the price of your air freight is going to fluctuate too. So one way companies get around this when they're bidding on a $300 million contract that they're going to have to make air deliveries for the next 2 years, they buy oil hedges, right? It's kind of like insurance against the oil price fluctuating. Now, Ephraim, as I mentioned previously, had a very high tolerance for risk, and he did not want to pay the insurance. So he did not buy that oil hedge. And just so happened, right after we won the contract in early 2007, there was a massive spike in oil prices. I mean, it was huge. And it was so big that it made what was going to be a profitable contract into, we were going to lose money on the AK-47 ammo, because the AK-47 ammo was high volume, low value. So the vast majority of the cost was in the air freight. So, so we were like, fuck, we're going to lose money on this. What are we going to do? What are we going to do? And it was already too late to change sources, because we had already done all the licenses, and the army was yelling at us, deliver, deliver now. Or fight in Afghanistan. They have a fighting season, because in the winter, there's so much snow and high mountains that you can't go through the mountain passes. So they only fight when like the snow melts. So the snow was melting. They're like, fighting season is starting, and our Afghan allies are running out of ammo, and you guys need to deliver, and our Afghan allies' lives are on the line. So you guys got to do this. And so they're pressuring us very hard to deliver as quickly as possible. We didn't have enough time to switch sources. We sourced the stuff from Albania because they were giving us such an amazing price, and then we realized that because of the enormous spike in oil prices, we couldn't deliver profitably. And then I had the idea because the ammunition was stored in these metal tins, inside these sealed metal tins. They call them sardine cans, and those tins are put in these heavy wooden crates. And the wooden crates are not really necessary. I figured, hey, we could just get rid of the wooden crates, and we'll save a whole bunch of weight. And therefore, maybe we'll bring the weight down. If you save weight, you save on shipping. We'll bring it down to a point where we're making money again. And Efraim was like, oh, that's a great idea, but we can't really trust. We need to find out what the actual numbers are, for the weight and all that stuff, and arrange for all the wooden crates to be removed. But we can't trust the Albanians, because who knows what numbers they'll give us. We need to send someone on the ground to go take care of this whole situation. And he told me, he's like, yeah, but like, you are busy managing this project. I was like managing the whole contract at that point. He was going after other contracts, and he's like, I need you here in the office, to deal with the team and to deal with the government and with all the other suppliers who we were dealing with. We're, I think, sourcing from like 8 different suppliers at that time. And he's like, so I don't want you going to Albania. It'll take up too much of your time. He's like, why don't we find someone else to go to Albania? And so I thought, well, my friend, it was one of my best friends. His name is Alex. So I was like, Alex is a good guy who's looking for a job anyway at this time. So why don't we send him? So we send Alex over there. And Alex calls me up like the day after he gets there, and he's like, hey, he's like, I just inspected the stuff. This is the weight, of the crates. He's like, but you do know that this stuff is all Chinese, right? And I'm like, what are you talking about? It's Albanian. And he's like, oh, no, it's definitely Chinese. There's Chinese markings all over the crates, all over the tins. There's Chinese documents inside the tins. And I'm like, are you absolutely sure? I mean, he's like, dude, I know what Chinese looks like. And so I told Efraim, I'm like, and Ephraim's like, fuck, our contract says no Chinese could be delivered. It specifically said in our contract, no Chinese ammunition could be delivered directly or indirectly under this contract. And the reason they put that there is because there's an arms embargo against China that was put in place by the United States in 1989 after the Tiananmen Square massacre, to punish the Chinese military for suppressing a pro-democracy movement in China. And so it said that, no Chinese munitions. So Ephraim's like, he's like, oh, I don't know if I trust Alex, that he knows what he's talking about. He's like, tell him to send us some pictures so we know that what it is. Obviously, big mistake, right? So Alex sends us pictures by email of the Chinese markings that all got entered into evidence in court later. And we look at it, we're like, yeah, it's Chinese markings. There's no way around that. And so we were planning already on getting rid of the wooden crates. And so at the time, we were like, okay, well, we have two choices. We could either tell the army and say, hey, can we get an exemption for this? Because this ammunition actually was given to the Albanians in the 70s, way before that arms embargo was even put in place. So this ammunition didn't even violate the terms of the arms embargo. But our contract with the U.S. Army did not mention the arms embargo at all. It just said no Chinese, period. So it did violate the terms of our contract. So we're like, okay, they didn't really specify. There's no other reason they would have put that in the contract except because of the arms embargo. So we know what they're referring to, but it doesn't say that. So maybe we can go and ask them for a waiver, for a letter saying that we can deliver this stuff. And then we thought, but there's a chance that they won't give it to us. They'll be like, oh, it's not fair that General Dynamics couldn't bid on this stuff, and they submitted a protest. So it's not fair that you can deliver this stuff when they couldn't, even though it doesn't violate the terms of the arms embargo. So we were worried that they would take the contract away from us and put it out for open bid. And we're like, we don't want to risk, losing a $300 million contract. So why don't we just not tell them about it? What they don't know won't hurt them. The ammo is good. It's fully functional. There's no rust on it or anything like that. It was in perfect quality. When you store in vacuum sealed sardine cans, they can last forever as long as it's like stored properly. So we're like, oh, what they don't know won't hurt them. So why don't we have Alex find someone to repackage the ammunition, to get rid of the wooden crates, which we were planning on doing anyway, and to get rid of the sardine cans, which also have Chinese markings on them, and get rid of all the Chinese documents inside the sardine cans. So Alex found this guy who owned a cardboard box factory and hired him to do the whole repackage operation, to provide the cardboard boxes as well as the workers. And we started doing that, started delivering to Afghanistan. The army was thrilled. We were delivering, saving our Afghan allies by supplying them the munitions they badly needed. We started delivering on a regular basis. And then, of course, as Efraim does, he started getting greedy, right? He started thinking, because I'll back up a little. We had gotten this contact with the Albanian government to buy this ammo through Henry Tomei. Henry is, in the movie, he's played by Bradley Cooper. Henry is a Swiss arms dealer. We had actually met him, unlike in the movie. We didn't just bump into him randomly at a casino table in Vegas. We did meet him for the first time in person in Vegas, but we had already been doing business with him prior to that in real life. We were actually introduced to him by our investor, Ralph. Ralph, in the movie, he's played by this Jewish laundromat owner. In real life, his name is Ralph, but that's as far as the similarities go, is just the name. In real life, he's a Mormon, and he owns a machine gun factory, and he lives in Utah. So Efraim had gotten a connection with Ralph through his dad. His dad had done some business with Ralph. Ralph started funding Ephraim's contracts when Efraim first started out. And so they built a business relationship, and Ralph was very happy. Efraim was winning all these contracts, and he was paying him as he should, as far as Ralph knew. And so Ralph introduced him to Henry, and we started getting quotes from him, and that's where we got the quote for the Albanian stuff before we won the contract. So And once we were starting delivering on a regular basis, Efraim, he says, he's like, he tells the guy who was the box guy, right? His name was Costa, the guy who owned the box factory that we hired to do the repackaging. He tells Costa, he's like, hey, do you know anyone in the Albanian Ministry of Defense? And Costa says, yeah, actually, one of my cousins works there. Albania is a small country. And so he's like, could you ask your cousin if he could find out what the Albanian Ministry of Defense is getting paid for the ammunition that we're buying? Because we were buying it from Henry, and he wanted to know what Henry's profit margin was. So Costa, asks his cousin. His cousin comes back and tells, Costa. Costa tells Efraim that the Albanian Ministry of Defense is getting paid 2 cents a round for the ammunition. We were paying Henry 4 cents a round, and Efraim lost his shit. He's like, that motherfucker, he's doubling his money, that piece of shit. We gotta cut that piece of shit out. Yeah, he's so fucking greedy. I can't believe he's doubling our. And I'm like, Efraim, we're selling it to the US government for 10.5 cents a round. Like, what are you complaining about? He's like, yeah, but well, first of all, we're paying, 4 cents a round in shipping costs. So we're making 1.5 cents in profit. I'm like, yeah, that's about what Henry's making too. He's like, who gives a shit? This is our contract, and we're taking all the risk with the Chinese stuff that he didn't tell us about, which was true. I mean, he didn't tell us in advance. And so anyway, Efraim decides to fly over to Albania and try to cut Henry out of the deal to deal with the Albanians directly. He flies over to Albania, meets with the Albanians, who we find out later the ones he was meeting with turned out to be part of the Albanian mafia. The guy he met, a guy named Mikhail Deliorgi, ended up getting arrested later on, and it turned out he was like one of the leaders of Albanian organized crime. And this guy, Mikhail Deliorgi, he tells Efraim, he's like, listen, I know you want a better price. He's like, I'll tell you, he's like, and I know that you're paying this other guy, Costa, to do the repackaging. I'll tell you what, you give us the repackaging contract, we'll make some money on the repackaging, and then I could give you a little discount on the ammo because I'm making more money overall. And Ephraim's like, yeah, that's a great idea. That guy's fired, you're hired, let's do this. So they did that. And of course, Deliorgi, who had connections with the Efraim, tried to do it directly with the Albanians, but they insisted that the money keep flowing through Henry. They were like, we're not cutting Henry out of the deal. And we don't know this for sure, but I assume that's because Henry was paying off the politicians and organized crime in order to make this whole deal work.
He's a bit of a shady character, Henry, isn't he? Doesn't Amnesty International want him for something? Or
yeah, so Amnesty International has opened up an investigation on him. He was never, I'll say this for him, he's been accused of a lot of things, but he was never caught. He's never
was he accused of supplying warlords and stuff like that?
Correct. He was accused of supplying warlords in Africa, but it was never proven. And that's why he was on a watch list, still is, I imagine, but he was never banned from doing business, supplying the US government and US allies. And that's why when we bid on the contract, actually, we were required to tell the Army in advance who our suppliers were. And we listed him as one of our suppliers. The Army knew who they were buying secondhand from, and they still did it. As I said, Henry was on a watch list, but he wasn't on the banned list. He was suspected, but it wasn't proven. And I believe that's still the case to this day. I believe he's still active. He's probably one of the most, active international arms dealers in the world. So anyway, they refused to cut Henry out of the deal. And I assume because he was paying off the politicians and everyone. But they did give us that discount. And of course, Costa after Efraim comes back from Albania, Costa calls me up and he's like, listen, I understand that you switched providers for the repackaging. It's just business. I get it, no problem. But I did get stuck with $20,000 worth of boxes that I have nothing to do with now because I manufactured those boxes for your project. you guys are going to need these boxes anyway. Why don't you just buy these boxes from me, and then we'll call it, we'll go our separate ways. And I said, that makes sense. We'll buy the boxes from you. And I told Efraim, hey, buy Costa's boxes. And Ephraim's like, yeah, sure. I'll do that. I get another call from Costa a week later. Hey, I haven't heard from Efraim. What's going on? I thought you guys were going to buy the boxes. So I ask Efraim, I'm like, hey, Efraim, what's going on with the boxes? And Ephraim's like, yeah, I talked to the new guys. They said they already sourced their boxes. They don't want to deal with Costa. So we're not going to buy those boxes. And I'm like, Efraim, we kind of like pulled the rug out from under him. He's stuck with 20 grand of boxes. Why don't we just buy the boxes, pay him for this just as a, just to keep things on the level here. I mean, he knows what we're doing, like you don't want to make enemies. And Ephraim's like, nah, this guy's a nobody. He's not going to do anything. Trust me, he's a pussy. He's not going to do anything. That's what he said. And I'm like, are you sure about that? Because he seems pretty insistent. We buy the box. He's like, trust me. He's like, I know these kind of guys. They're not going to do shit. He's like, you just let it go. Let it go. This is on me. Don't worry about it. You don't have to worry about this. And I'm like, okay, fine. What am I going to do about it? Like, he still hasn't paid me. I didn't have the money to pay Costa. So I was still living off my savings at the time. And I thought it was a bad idea, but Efraim could not be convinced. So anyway, Costa obviously got pretty upset at this, and he actually called up Efraim and secretly recorded the conversation. And this recording is on YouTube. You can find it, where he's talking. I think you can hear me in the background a little bit talking to Efraim. It's a little warbled, but it's mostly between Costa and Efraim, and where Costa tries to lead Efraim to admit that the people he's dealing with, Deliorgi, are part of the mafia, so he can get him on record saying that. And you can hear in the phone call, like Costa is like, so didn't you tell me those guys are mafia guys? And Ephraim's like, oh, I think they are, but once I don't want to know. I don't know, and I don't want to know. And anyway, Costa goes and tells the New York Times what we're doing, and he tells the FBI what we're doing, and so they both open up an investigation on us. And the New York Times eventually, like 6 months later, publishes a front page article about us, and it was not a flattering article. They were mostly using it to try to make the Bush administration look bad, that they trusted a couple of kids to run this massive contract that was so critical to the war on terror. And it created a huge political firestorm. There were hearings on the floor of Congress. There's YouTube videos out there where like some senator, I think either a senator or a congressman, has like one of those big easels with those big papers, and like our mugshots are on that, and like, these are the guys that the Bush administration has been trusting to deliver this critical component on the war on terror. A 21-year-old person who's been arrested for marijuana, and his vice president is a massage therapist.
Were you, so obviously you're at this point, you're fraudulently repackaging kind of Chinese ammunition. You're dealing with the Albanian mafia. You're under investigation by the FBI. Were you stoned the whole time?
Efraim was like a hardcore drug user. Like, he would wake up in the morning and like hit the bong, and then hit it multiple times a day and snort lines of coke. And then when he would go to sleep, he would take sleeping pills to go to sleep, because he was like so coked up and stuff. He was doing a whole bunch of drugs. He was always at like trying to pressure me to do drugs with him, I guess, but he liked having company in his drug use. But I couldn't work like that. I mean, like, I can't work stoned. I like weed. I'm not, I'll admit that I do like weed, but I like it to relax, not to work.
Yeah, not to sell guns.
Like, if I smoke weed, I'm not going to get anything productive. That's just how I function. So I wouldn't like smoke weed with him or do coke with him and all that stuff. At the end of the day, when we're kind of like, winding down, then I would smoke some weed and chill. But he was high all day on all sorts of stuff. Yeah.
Crazy. So so take us back then. So obviously you're being talked about on the floor of Congress, and there's investigations going on against you. Talk us how you were eventually convicted of 71 counts of fraud.
What happened was so just to back up a little, 6 months before this, before the New York Times article, the federal agents raided his office. And this is actually about 2 months after I left the company. So, okay, let me back up a little more. In June, it was either June or July of 2007, after he had already worked out the new deal with the Albanians and the entire contract was going smoothly. We were delivering like 4 or 5 aircraft loads every week into Kabul. And Efraim like tells me, he walks into my office after, at this point we had about a staff of 15. We had hired a bunch of people to do various projects. We had a decent office. And he walks into my office after most of the employees had left for the day, and he's like, hey, you know, a lot of the guys around the office are telling me you're not pulling your weight around here. And I'm like, what are you talking about? What guys are saying that? And he's like, yeah, it doesn't matter who's saying that, but that's what they're saying. You know, you're not really helping us out with, like, you know, the Iraq contracts. I'm like, what do you, Iraq contracts? I'm not working on the Iraq contracts. I'm working on the Afghan contract only, you know? And he's like, yeah, that's exactly right. You're not helping with the Iraq contracts. And I'm like, I'm not one of your employees. I don't have to work on everything. I'm working on a commission basis, right? You know, I get zero unless, except for the things I work on. You know, you want to give me a piece of the Iraq contract, I'll work on the Iraq contract. He's like, oh, don't be crazy. Why would I give you a piece on the Iraq contract? You didn't help us win those contracts. And I'm like, then why should I help you deliver on it? And he says, well, because I mean, you know, if we fail delivering on those Iraq contracts, I mean, you know, the bad marks on the company could take the whole company down, and that takes your Afghan contract with it. So you got to help the company. And I'm like, well, in that case, do you want to give me a piece of the company? You know, I'll help you with everything if you give me a piece of the company. And he's like, you know what, David? He's like, I've been giving this a lot of thought. And I own 100% of AEY, and I would never consider giving any of it away to anyone else. I always intended for it to be 100% owned by me. But, you know, you're one of my best friends, and you're a big reason why this company is in the position it's in, and we've had the success we've had. So I'll tell you what, instead of your 25%, you know, for the Afghan contract, I'm going to give you a very generous $100,000 a year executive salary plus 1% of AUI. And I'm like, 1% of, I'm like, well, thank you for the $100,000 a year salary. I appreciate that. But my 25% of the Afghan contract is set to make me $15 million over the next 2 years. So that $100,000 a year salary doesn't really move the needle. And it's also, the Afghan contract is going to make this company at least 80 to 90% of all the profits we're going to make in the next 2 years. So I think I'll stick with my 25% rather than your 1%. And he's like, well, how about 0%? Because that's the only offer on the table. And I'm like, you motherfucker, you know? And I'm like, okay, in that case, I'll see you in court, you piece of shit. I quit. And I walked out the door, and that was the last I worked at AEY. So anyway, about 2 months after that, I get a phone call from one of the secretaries at the office. I was on good terms with everyone, you know, except for him. I was like, you know, known as the nice boss, right? You know, because he was a total dick. Like, he would walk into like the office and start screaming at everyone, I don't pay you motherfuckers to hang out and surf the internet. Get on the phone and make me some fucking money. You know, like that. He would literally
I know someone
like yelling at the top of his lungs. Like, everyone was like really stressed out whenever he would like show up. So yeah, nobody really liked him, but they put up with him because, you know, because they needed the money. So anyway, the secretary calls me up, and she's like, hey, I just wanted to, you know, David, I just wanted to let you know that the federal agents just raided our office. And I'm like, holy fuck, you know, the gig is up, as they say. And so they gathered all the computers and took all the files, and I of course immediately called up Alex and told him what was going on. Alex was on the next flight home. He was like, I'm not dealing with this shit. I'm not going down, because he was getting paid a salary. He wasn't even getting a percentage of the contract or anything. And and they also did a whole bunch of shady shit trying to like pin the stuff on Alex, and he was like, fuck these guys. They like lied to him about them raiding the office, and he thought, well, they're trying to pin everything on me as the guy on the ground in Albania. So anyway, Alex and I both contact, a defense attorney. Our defense attorney says, well, you got to go through your emails and see what kind of evidence they have against you. And so we go through our emails, and it turns out that there was quite a bit of evidence because, and Ephraim had insisted that Alex email him pictures of the Chinese ammo. And there was also another email where Ralph, our investor, gave us step-by-step instructions on how to sand off Chinese markings off wooden crates, including pictures.
Yeah, that'll do it.
Yeah, that'll do it.
Yeah, exactly. So it was incontrovertible. I mean, we knew that the evidence was strong against us, and we were not going to win this case. And anyway, our lawyers told us we needed about $300,000 to even have a chance of fighting the government, and we did not have that money. And so our lawyers told us, well, and your only option really is to just cooperate. I mean, you guys didn't really make that much money, and you're not really the target of this investigation. So we agreed, and we talked to the agents, and the agent, the way they work is they're like, okay, you're going to tell us if you decide to cooperate with the government. They're like, you're going to tell us everything you know. And if you leave one thing out, if we think it's on purpose, you get 0 credit for cooperating. So make sure you tell us everything. So obviously we told them, we were both scared shitless, and we told them everything we knew. And at the end of the interview, the agent told me, he's like, yeah, I know you're probably wondering what we know. And one of the things that we found funny is when we did the raid on AEY's office, we found this handwritten piece of paper on Ephraim's desk with a to-do list in his handwriting, and one of the items on the to-do list was repackaged Chinese ammo.
Yeah, that's so clever.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I don't know why he had to say Chinese ammo. He could have just, I don't know why he had to make it so obvious. Yeah, he did not have to use the word Chinese. But anyway, so they're like, yeah, so we knew about that, and we were already looking into this aspect of this. So anyway, but then for the next 6 months, the federal agents pretty much disappeared. I mean, they called us up and asked us some questions, but they didn't really do anything. And Ephraim kept on delivering to the U.S. Army even after this raid, like 4 or 5 aircraft loads a week for the next 6 months, and the Army kept on paying him every aircraft load he got paid. So we thought, well, maybe, the feds are not going to pursue this case because they don't seem to be doing anything about it, and which was great. And the agents, they told Alex and me, they're like, yeah, you guys aren't targets of the investigation. Even if we do bring charges, we're not going to bring charges against you. We're you're just witnesses. And we're like, great, because we can't afford to be to fight this, Then the New York Times published their article 6 months after the raid, and as soon as Congress started holding hearings about it, they actually sent us a subpoena to testify in front of Congress. Our lawyer, for me and Ephraim, our lawyers told them that we would be pleading the Fifth the whole time, pleading the Fifth Amendment, saying that we're not going to incriminate ourselves. And then Congress decided, you know what, we're not going to hold the hearing because all you're going to be doing is pleading the Fifth the whole time. So they didn't have us testify. But 3 days after that article in the New York Times, the Army put out a statement saying they had no idea any of this was going on, which they very much did. As soon as the raid happened, the Justice Department told them. That came out in court later by email. The Army told them that it was critical, that these munitions were critical for the mission in Afghanistan, and if they wanted them to stop taking delivery, they would have to get a letter from the Attorney General instructing them to stop taking delivery. The Attorney General of the United States, the head of the Justice Department, never sent that letter to the U.S. Army. So the Army kept taking delivery and kept on paying for it. But of course, 3 days after, the New York Times article, they put out a statement saying they had no idea and that they're canceling AEY's contract. And then like a couple days after that, the Justice Department decided to bring charges against us. So the agents actually called up my lawyer, and they're like, hey, we know that we told Alex and David that we're not going to charge them, but unfortunately they were just too involved in the whole operation. We can't bring charges against Ephraim unless we charge Alex and David as well as Ralph, our investors. They charged the 4 of us with fraud. And the way they charged us was they said, this every aircraft of the Albanian ammunition um, included a document, right? And that document it got included with the delivery. It's called a certificate of conformance. The certificate of conformance had listed on it the type of ammunition, the quantity of ammunition, the year it was manufactured, and the place of origin. And on place of origin, you guys put Albania, but you knew that it was really China. And not only did you know it was China, you had a whole repackaging operation to hide that it was from China. So each submission of this document, which you knew to be false, is an act of fraud. And you guys delivered 71 aircraft loads of this stuff. So that's 71 counts of fraud. And each act of fraud could get you 5 years in prison. So you're looking at 355 years in prison. And they're like, but that's only if you fight us in court. If you plead guilty, then we as prosecutors have the power to combine those 71 acts into one. So the maximum you're going to get is 5 years in prison. And it's not up to us, of course. The judge is the one who sentences you, but because you pled guilty, we're going to submit a request to the judge to give you on the low end of the guidelines. So you probably won't get 5 years. Maybe you'll get 1 year, maybe just, probation. Who knows? We'll tell the judge to go easy on you for pleading guilty. So what will it be? You want to fight us in court and maybe spend the rest of your life in prison, or you want to plead guilty and maybe get nothing? So we're like, that's a no-brainer. Yeah. So of course we all pled guilty. Alex and I pled guilty immediately. Efraim tried to fight him for a little, then realized he was going to lose, and he ended up pleading guilty as well. Ralph decided to take it all the way to court. He decided to plead innocent, and they didn't want to sentence us, Efraim, me, and Alex, until they finished Ralph's court case, because they wanted to use the sentencing as leverage against us in case they wanted us to testify in Ralph's court case. And so we were in limbo for 3 years because it took them 3 years to go through Ralph's court case. They did one trial. It was a hung jury. One juror refused to convict him. Then they did the whole thing again and convicted him on the second trial. So Ralph ended up getting 4 years in prison. At least he didn't get 355 years. The judge went really easy on him, relatively. He was an older guy. He's like in his 70s. So, I don't know if that had anything to do with it. But Alex and I both got sentenced. Alex got 5 months of like house arrest, and I got 7 months of house arrest. So we didn't go to prison, which was great. I'm very grateful for that. Efraim probably would have gotten maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit of prison time, but maybe even just house arrest as well, because they knew that they were just throwing us under the bus. They were just covering their own asses, right? I mean, they were happy to pay for the stuff even after they found out that it was Chinese. They kept on paying for it, and they knew it. But so Efraim probably would have gotten something similar to us, probably a bit more. But during that 3-year period, while we were waiting for Ralph's trial to be over, we were out on bond, right? So we had to pay bail to stay out of prison before we were getting sentenced. And the bail had the bond, as they call it. It had certain rules, like you can't leave South Florida, right? They also told us we couldn't be in the arms business. So we had to take drug tests, a bunch of different rules while we were awaiting sentencing. And so Alex and I, we were scared shitless. I mean, we were, I completely quit the business, and I went back to school. I started studying mechanical engineering. I went back to doing massage therapy because I had needed to make money. I had like a baby daughter at the time, that I had to support. And so, I got a job, a part-time job working at a food bank because my lawyer told me that would look good to the judge. Like we did everything that we could to make ourselves look like we are reformed, good citizens. Efraim had a different approach to it. He, of course, has a very high tolerance for risk. So he decided, instead of doing that, he had his latest minion, who, it wasn't the guy he replaced me with. He fucked that guy over too. I think it was like 3 or 4 people down. So his pattern, after he replaced me, he had a new guy and had him work for about 6 to 9 months. Then he fucked that guy over, and then he replaced that guy. So he kept on like replacing people and fucking them over. That was kind of like, his thing. So he had the latest guy, he decided to start a company under that guy's name and do business under his name. And so he was trying to do this deal with some gun dealer in Central Florida near Orlando. But he's like Efraim is a bit of a control freak, right? So he would hear his minion trying to negotiate, and he'd be like, give me the phone. I'm a way better negotiator than, which he is. He's a very good negotiator. So he would he grabbed the phone. He's like, Efraim Diveroli, I'm an investor in the company. And he started talking to him. The guy realized who he was. I guess he must have Googled him or something. Probably thought that Efraim is trying to set him up to do something illegal so he can get a reduction on his own sentence, which is how the federal system works. You only really get reduction on your sentence if you throw someone else under the bus. And so this guy he was trying to do business with calls up the ATF, which is the Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms Administration, who are in charge of regulating firearms, and as well as alcohol and tobacco and explosives. And so the ATF tells this guy, he's like, oh, that's very interesting. Why don't you introduce one of our undercover agents as your business partner? So this guy introduces the undercover ATF agent to Efraim as his business partner over the phone. And the undercover ATF agent tells him, he's like, hey, I'm the kind of guy that likes to look you in the eye and shake your hand before we finish a deal. So why don't you come up to Orlando so we can, make this deal happen. And he knows that Efraim is not allowed to leave South Florida, right? So Efraim says, he's like, oh yeah, I'm that kind of guy too. That's how real men do business, and fine, I'll be up there next weekend. And the ATF agent says, oh, why don't you bring up one your favorite firearm? We'll go shooting, while you're up here. And knowing that Efraim had already pled guilty, so he's a convicted felon, so it is illegal for a convicted felon to be in possession of a firearm. He's trying to entrap him into doing more crimes, right? Efraim, to his credit at the time, says, oh, I can't do that. I've already pled guilty to this thing, so like I can't be in possession of a firearm. I'm not bringing a gun. Why? Don't stop asking me to bring guns, So he drives up to Orlando, meets with the undercover ATF agent. ATF agent tells him, ATF agent knows that it's also illegal to hand a felon a firearm. You're not allowed to supply felons with firearms. Yeah. What he does is he pops open the trunk of his car, and he tells Efraim, hey, check out that gun I've got right over there. That's the latest HK handgun. It's super cool. Why don't you check it out? And Efraim, he knows Ephraim's like a gunner. Ephraim's like, oh, I heard about that thing. That thing is super cool. Let me see. He picks it up. He's like, oh, this thing is awesome. Let's go off to the range and pop off some rounds. And the ATF agent slaps cuffs on his wrists, and he's like, you're a felon in possession of a firearm. You're under arrest.
Grassed him up.
So the undercover ATF agent totally entraps him into picking up this gun. And because he had committed this, you can get up to 10 years in prison for being a felon in possession of a firearm. It's very serious. So he could have gotten 10 years for that. And because he committed a crime before getting sentenced, he invalidated his plea agreement that he got for pleading guilty for the fraud charge. So when you invalidate your plea agreement, the prosecutors are not required to ask the judge to go easy on you. So he doesn't get credit for pleading guilty. He could have gotten 15 years total, 5 for the fraud charge and 10 for the gun charge. But he hired the best lawyers in Miami. I heard he spent like millions of dollars on them. They eventually negotiated it down to like 4 years. So he also got sentenced to 4 years in prison. He also tried to entrap a whole bunch of people to get that further reduced. Yeah. There's actually an audio recording on YouTube where he's talking to his dad, trying to convince his dad to entrap someone they know into committing a crime so that he can get his sentence reduced. It didn't work. His dad refused to do it. But yeah, I mean, he ended up serving like 3.5 years because he got like half a year off for like a drug program, because he was a fair drug addict, and he went through the program. So he got like half a year off his sentence. So he ended up serving 3.5 years. He got out, I believe, in 2015 or 2016. And so now he is, from what I hear, still living in Miami and still doing his usual shenanigans.
He sounds like an exhausting person.
Sounds like
around.
a cock.
Yeah.
Totally is. He's a very exhausting person to be around. I'll tell you, when I finally quit, I mean, I was super depressed because I went from thinking I was about to make $15 million to barely being able to make rent with a daughter to support. But I was super depressed. But at the same time, once I recovered from that, it was just an enormous relief, not just not dealing with him anymore. Because
Yeah, I imagine.
we're almost 2 years and it was super stressful. I mean,
It's like an abusive relationship.
it really is. Like, he had no sense of like any sort of boundaries whatsoever in general, but like specifically no work-life balance at all. Like, he would call me up at like 3 a.m, start yelling and screaming I should get to the office right this fucking second, like literally all the time. It was very, very stressful to work with him, and my life is immeasurably better now that he's out.
It's you seem a much happier person now, telling these stories rather than living them.
Way better. I am way happier with my life these days than I ever was back then. Yeah, I love what I do now. I've got several successful businesses that I can feel good that I am actually providing value to people and that people, really appreciate. And so it's way better. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Great. Well, well done on coming out the other side.
Yeah, and thank you so much for your time, David. It's been
absolutely, yeah. Thank you. It's been fascinating. Great. Thank you so much.
And sorry for calling you money hungry before accidentally. I know. Listen,
he won't forget that now forever.
Yeah, I'll just do a little interview. Oh no, I'll come across as anti-Semitic at the same time. Apologies for that.
Yeah, it's all good. It's just because I've seen like every time I mention I'm Jewish, like half of the comments in the YouTube, are like, oh, surprise, surprise, he's Jewish, like
of course,
he's an arms dealer who's Jew. I bet he's involved with the Mossad, like on and on. It's like, and of course, when I talk about Efraim, people are like, oh, what a typical Jew, So it's like, I get it, like I'm not saying that there is no material there to back up the stereotypes. There definitely is. But
it is a stereotype.
Yeah.
At the end of the day,
and it's not one that I was trying to perpetrate.
Yeah, it's all good. It's all good. The truth is that I've kind of like I'm very zen about it now because I realize that all the anti-Semites who are writing their hateful comments in the YouTube are helping the algorithm.
Of course.
So it's like,
hell yeah.
Yeah, they're paying the money. Let them do it.
Exactly. Like sometimes I'll respond to them to try to egg them on to get additional.
Yeah, keep that ball rolling.
Well, listen, if you want to do that on the comments of this, you're more than welcome to. We'll join in.
I'm happy.
David, hope you have a great day. Thank you so much for spending time with us. And yeah,
speak soon. Take care.
Always, stay in touch.
All right.
My pleasure.
Thanks from David.
Bye.
High five. That was mad. I mean, so. Yeah, I mean,
how long is this episode?
So yeah, it's probably a bit short. It was so very fascinating.
We just spoke to David for just under 2 hours.
Yeah, and it was fascinating. Obviously, with it being such a complex story,
so many like there's the story and then there's the stories,
and it was like, well, this is the explanation as to why we had to do this, and we'll probably chop it down in some ways because at one point the camera ran out of memory, which I mean, obviously we do.
We do hundreds of hours thousands of hours a year of footage of recording.
Yeah,
we've never ran out of.
We've never ever, and that was a fresh card. Never maxed out a card.
We've just maxed the card out and then started the new one.
So that was but it was unbelievably fascinating.
Yeah, and I bet you there's so much more meat on the bone. I bet you there's so many more stories and so much.
100%. David seems like someone it'd be great to get high with. If you had a whole night to like...
kitchen chatter.
Yeah.
He went from a 6-year-old making 50 cents a week, throwing garbage down an apartment for people, to making hundreds of millions of pounds selling Chinese bullets to the American government. And the whole lot in between is the story, and it's fascinating.
Yeah. And now he makes flossing.
Now he cleans your teeth.
He's had a bit of a life. Yeah. But a very fascinating fella. You can tell how zen he mentioned about being zen at the end, that you can tell that
he's a chill dude now.
yeah, and a fascinating story. And yeah, like you say, that the complexities of that, and like it's really hard to kind of explain how on the edge a lot of that is. He was very chilled while he's talking about
he's telling stories where you're like, oh shit, and he's telling it like it's nothing.
Yeah, like it's just actually we sold some grenades as well. We got that from different.
It was when he went, yeah. So that was to do with the grenade. Like he said, I was like going, you just mentioned buying grenades like it was buying fucking watermelons. Yeah, that was just the grenades.
Or mangoes. He did deal in mangoes for a bit.
Mangoes, yeah. Harry did.
I did call him money hungry.
That Harry did very accidental, not anti-Semitism that he kind of made Harry feel bad for in a jokey way, which was funny to watch. Harry nearly turned into a puddle in his chair.
He went, well, I did mention that I was Jewish. So that was I could feel my heart going a bit.
Also, he was cool enough to just go, it's fine.
Very I mean, he's chilled enough as well to forgive or semi-forgive a fella who
owes him $5 million.
I don't know. The way he presented that was like, it's water under a bridge, but then he blatantly talks about him so much on these kind of interviews that he has like an impression nailed down of him and like
Ephraim.
I'm Ephraim. It's just like Trump. He stole our guns.
Yeah.
But
Belter episode.
And yeah, that was that was the Mad That record. We're a bit awkward on how to end this one because this is the.
Listen, we can show you the peak behind the wall.
Yeah,
this is what people love.
This is the first one that we've recorded of the season, but this won't be the first one
that you
see in the season.
So we are. If you think maybe it was a bit rusty or something, whatever, this is our first Mad That record in 8-9 months. This is not the one the first you'll see in the series because we are restructuring it a little bit to weight it. But this was episode number 1 for us.
But it might be episode 4 or something. I also moved house today, so my head is
also moved house today.
Mashed.
We've got the roast tomorrow. And it's chocker. But we love Mad That and we love bringing it to you, so keep watching.
That was Mad That. High five.
But,